Welcome to our space. We're talking about the inspiring things with inspiring people is what inspires us. Waiting for you here are the infinite possibilities that creation, collaboration, and connection have to offer. A universe where we see everything through rose-tinted spectacles that help us to keep our faith in the power of imagination alive and well. And now, let's talk. Hello, welcome to Metralla Rosa. Today we are going to be exploring visual digital arts with London-based artist Oliver Gingrich. He is here with us to talk a little bit about the narrative of visual arts and its communion or relationship with technology. Thank you so much for joining us today and for accepting our invitation to talk about this. That sounds really, really interesting. But before getting to any particular matter, I would like to go very general and ask you, what do you think is the real power behind technology, and why is it so important in not just in our normal lives for everyone in modern society, but especially to be very aware of it in the territory of the arts?
It's a really good question. I personally see technology a bit as an enabler, as a facilitator, but also as an extension of self, increasingly. So, whereas maybe 50, 100 years ago, technology was always seen as separate, it kind of becomes more and more literally a prosthetic, a part of us. And as that, I think it needs to also play a role in the arts. For decades, literally in the contemporary art scene, technology is sometimes a little bit overlooked. When you go back in history to Leonardo da Vinci and other artists of the Renaissance, technology was always part of the artistic discourse, part of this idea of creation, innovation, future, but also presence. And that's how I like to see technology in the context of art, as something that allows us to reveal things, to unlock possibilities, to show things that we maybe couldn't show with normal means. And techne, this idea of techne, of something that is, but also logos, it's always a bit about power. It's a bit about this idea of something that can be done, that you can create. And yeah, that's what fascinates me about technology.
And you started your studies in London, in St. Martin, as fine arts studies, and then you did a master in digital media, in art.
No, it's actually more complicated.
It's more complicated.
Yeah. I studied a lot.
Okay.
I studied a lot. It goes all the way back to Vienna. I actually started with art and technology, so that's my training, my classical training, if you so want. Digital art, as it was called back then, at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, where I'm from.
Digital art.
Yeah, and I always worked with visual technology. So when I was even at school, I started to help to assist artists to do projection work. Quite a lot of large-scale projection, outdoor projection, but also indoors. Very often related to music and to sound. And then when I moved to London, I tried to focus a little bit more on classic contemporary arts, and that's when I did my master in fine arts at St. Martin's.
Okay.
And then I came full circle and finished my doctorate in digital entertainment. So that is an engineering doctorate, so quite technical actually, but with a focus on the arts, if you so want, so only on entertaining elements of the arts. But it was quite technical, so quite a bit of a focus on engineering, programming, kind of a technical angle on visual media forms.
Why do you think in general all people that feels very connected with the language of visual things, somehow they feel that technology can offer a lot of freedom, but at the same time it can be also very restrictive or very specific? Now that you were mentioning that you started doing installations always related with sound or space or lighting, how can you be even further when you work with technology, considering that we feel that technology could be anything and could open so many interesting, even unknown possibilities? Have you started imagining things that you would like, a little bit like a science fiction? Have you started to exploring things a little bit less related with the possible and more related with the apparently impossible?
I like to think so. I mean, I'm very interested in this cusp of technology and the limits of it, and to push that, I think this idea of being a bit of a pioneer and trying uncharted waters.
It feels like that talking to you.
Yeah,
Like you could be a Giulio Verne.
I think it's technology. What every artist does, though, and so sometimes this pioneering spirit can literally be on a conceptual level, that it's just an idea that has been unexplored, and sometimes it's technical and practical, and you're just fascinated by the possibilities of machine learning or the possibilities of GANs and how you can create visual imagery that are purely created by machines, and to push that. And I can't be an expert at everything, so very often this idea, this interest is really driven by a conceptual angle. So it's more about which questions can we ask that haven't really been asked, and how can we do that on a visual level so that it is interesting for somebody who's exploring the art, so an audience, but also what I'm really interested in is to assure that the audience almost becomes kind of a co-creator of the art piece, and by them engaging with it, they almost create their own little version of the art piece, if that makes sense.
So now that you mentioned the experience of the audience, when you have had already the experience of creating things related with installation and very immersive shows, you work with Analema, which is a group, a collective. Please tell me about a little bit of the work you did at the Tate Exchange, that is an open space to actually bring community and art possibilities all together. And I think it's one of the more interesting things that Tate is doing at the moment, because it's opening at least a space for new artists to get engaged with this big institution, super well known around the world. So please, if you can, tell me, how is the experience of working with others? Because sometimes technology can make you very solitary in your approach to things or to your process. A little bit because it makes you feel very independent, that you can't do anything. So how is work with others? Why Analema? And how did it started?
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions. I'm going to try to answer all of them. So I started to work with an Analema Group for the last 9-10 years. So Analema Group was founded 10 years ago by my friend Evgenia Emmets, and I think from the very first project that she did, there were 2 projects she did without me, but I was always involved and always kind of somehow at the fringes. And then when I started with my doctorate, initially we were thinking, how can we collaborate and do something that is interesting for everybody? And I was telling you, I've got quite a bit of a background in visuals and sound and the intersection between that and these two elements, and so there's also the third partner in our kind of smaller family of Analema Group members, Dr. Alain. And so the 3 of us, he's really coming from an immersive sound angle.
So you are 3?
We're 4, and 4. We're growing as a team.
Okay. That's good.
There's a core team of 4, and then there are others who are helping us a lot with putting the projects underway, like Drusilla Borrell, and others who are helping us to create what we want to do. Analema Group projects tend to be quite technical, quite complex, and so very often we work with experts and different experts in different fields to create what we are setting out to do. In the case of this particular project, Kima it's been a 10 year long journey of looking at visual sound from a lot of different angles.
It's been okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
It's a very vast theme. So, I mean, there's so many different intersections between these two senses, and both sound and vision, they have so many different elements to it. And you can look at both phenomena from various different positions in terms of how you play with sound, how you create sound, how you perceive it, but also on a visual level. And what we were doing is we're looking at the phenomenon from a mathematical, purely mathematical angle, from a physical angle, and then also from a creative angle and from the angle of perception. So we tried to find a lot of different approaches and very much depended on the project. So yeah, throughout this journey, there's been a lot of different iterations, and what we always try to do is to create an immersive experience for the audience, where the audience is not just a bystander, but they really become part of the creation process. So they're actually creating the piece with us and in conjunction with us.
Okay, so let's explain to everyone. Kima Noise is this experience they created to present at the Tate Exchange, which is this amazing space in the same building of the Tate Modern. You have already done it.
No, it's coming up. So
in September you didn't have something?
Yeah, so this was a precursor, it was a pilot, if you so want. The big exhibition is coming up in November. So it's from the 20th to the 24th of November at the Tate Modern, at the Tate Exchange space, which is on the 5th floor. And every day there's going to be different programs. We've got talks, we've got a workshop, we've got performances planned. So it will be very lively, and there's a lot of different things to experience.
Very vibrant as a proposal, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is to create or recreate sculptures of sound. Is it correct? Is it that correct?
It's correct, yeah.
Okay. And how do you do that?
So yeah, it's actually we're not doing it, the audience is doing it, and that's the beauty of it.
Oh,
So
really?
we're inviting the audience to create their own drawings, perceptions of noise. I should probably go back a little bit. So noise is, urban noise is affecting us all and lots of different levels, and we've been working for 2 years now with a researcher called Professor Stephen Stansfeld. He's one of the key experts in the field. He's done the major studies for the World Health Organization, for the EU, but also for the Heathrow runway extension, for instance. So he's really a key medical expert, also psychological expert on how noise affects us in terms
Our
of learning,
well-being.
our mental health, our well-being, but also very simple things like our social behavior, how we react with one another. When it's very noisy, people get irritated, they help each other less. Our attention decreases. So when it's very noisy, obviously we can sleep less, and that affects our concentration, ultimately also how we perform at university or at work. But noise can also affect us physically, so it can literally affect our heart rate, and with that it can affect our diet, what we eat, and whether it can literally lead to diabetes. But it can, in extreme cases,
Can it
even
shape us, our appearance? I mean,
our appearance,
somehow,
physical.
yeah.
I think it's more something that has something to do with well-being, so it's more of an internal thing rather than an external factor. But it does definitely have some sort of a repercussion on how we behave with one another, and yeah, in that
And
respect.
do you have a negative perception of urban noise? Because you can approach urban noise from a positive perspective,
Exactly.
as exciting, as stimulating, as completely challenging,
Yeah.
but it can be
But
being
you're so absolutely
seen
right, and that's actually
from a negative perspective.
Yeah.
What do you think is in general the perception of people and the perception of, for example, these people very trained on the field, and they really know how is it? Is it positive? Is it negative?
I don't think there's a simple answer. So I completely agree with you, and I'm actually a bit of an advocatus diabolus in this case, because I don't know if it's the same for you.
I'm
but
a very urban person. I feel very stimulated in
I love
cities.
it. Yeah. I love the noise. I actually cannot sleep when it's too quiet. When it's really quiet outside, I get I can't really sleep that well. I need sirens and people shouting in the street, and it's what keeps me. It's almost like the blood that runs through my veins. I've always lived in big cities as well, so that's probably part of it. But so the reality is, urban noise doesn't need to affect us. It only affects us if we feel that we don't have control over it. And that's quite interesting. So if we feel that, it's just so noisy, but there's nothing I can do about it. I can't just get up and close the window, or I can't put some music on, or if people just feel
I cannot even
exposed,
detach from it.
Yeah.
Then it affects you.
Then
Because
it
I
affects you.
remember when I used to live in a penthouse building, last floor, and the noise of the machine of the lift was always present, but I didn't notice it until someone was coming and then saying, "How can you live with this sound?" And I was, "Which sound?" I can't listen any sound because somehow you can also detach from
You can feel
things
out.
but not everyone can do it. There's people that feels like it's a torture actually being in a situation like that, no?
I think the key is that you need to be, I think awareness is the word. So I think being aware of urban noise, and it's a factor that it's not something that happens subliminally, but something that is there, that you acknowledge. And as soon as you're aware not only of that there is noise, but also what it is, and you don't feel, as you said, detached from it, but it's just part of your environment. It's less invasive, but the key factor is really control. So as soon as you feel, and there's some studies, so it's not me saying this, there's research. Professor Stanford can talk much better about this than I can. But the studies show that if you have control, then suddenly you're changing the dynamic, and it doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect you physically as much. It doesn't affect your behavior as much. And I think what we want to do with this activity at the Tate is to start a discourse so that people become more aware. That they know.
Okay, create awareness around noise more than a negative sense of how noise makes us unhappy, no?
That's really
good. That's good. And the whole situation, how is going to be experienced for the people, for us that we are going to join the experience?
So it's actually quite a minimal, very beautiful installation. So imagine it's the 5th floor of the Tate Exchange, so of the Tate Modern, so nice views in all directions. And what we're working with is we're creating an immersive environment where the audience is invited to come in and experience these noises from around the Tate. Noise, so real noise
in real time. Okay.
So it's being streamed in from stations outside.
Oh wow!
We've got a lot of different noise boxes that will be capturing these sounds in real time and feeding them into the space. And then we have a very immersive sound spectrum. So it's a 3-dimensional array of speakers, if you so want, and the audience is invited to draw their own perception of noise.
Where are they going to be drawing? A special surface?
A touchpad, yeah. Imagine you're drawing an outline, and if I ask you, if you think of noise, what shape comes into mind? You can literally just draw a shape. And this shape is then being animated as a 3-dimensional geometric sound sculpture. And it's really quite something, because you feel this noise traveling through the space, and suddenly it's something that you can shape, that you literally shape into position. And it does change its characteristics, and it becomes from something that is just there and a little bit nuisant to something that is exciting and that you have physically control over, and that you
somehow very spontaneous and experience that it cannot be repeated, just unique. Every second on those moments will be unique.
Absolutely.
Are you going to be documenting that, recording it to keep track of the experiment?
Yes, so we're planning to do a film, which is a Kima noise film. It's an art film that has been in development already, so we started with the activity in September, and this film is now going to be an extension, if you so want. We're recording not only the installation itself, there's going to be a visual element too, where you see different perceptions of noise animated in real time and responding to this against a beautiful backdrop of the windows of the Tate Exchange, so you see the whole skyline and then animations of noise around it. It would be very beautiful. But we're also doing interviews with the local community, so with people who are living in the area and who are exposed to, as a lot of construction happening around there, and we want to hear their stories. We want to hear how they think about noise, if they think about it, if it affects them, if they do something about it, what they think they could do to improve it, to just start a discourse and to weave kind of a larger story, as you said, an awareness building activity ultimately.
Why, I'm curious, why Kima? Why?
Kima?
Yeah.
So Kima, so actually the Greek word Kima means the wave in Greek. And when we started to work with visual sound, we were looking at cymatic patterns. So it's the same root, etymologically speaking. So cymatic comes from the word kima,
Okay.
and that means the wave. And cymatic patterns are these patterns that you see when you have any granular surface like sand, and you pump sound waves through it. You will see beautiful formations, literally visual sound, and that's a physical phenomenon that is absolutely fascinating. And in physics class, maybe you tried it. A lot of schools try out how visual sound could look and what kind of patterns would emerge. And at the very beginning of the project, we've tried to recreate these patterns in digital ways and looking at mathematical formulas, waveform equations, and how to link sound and vision and kind of come and arrive at a deep understanding how the two interconnect, because they do on a lot of different levels.
Have you tried these already? I mean, without people, but trying the actual experiment is being done already for you in that same space with noises in real time?
So yeah, we've done both. So we've done very rudimentary experiments where we're trying with stark and with sand and with all sorts of ferromagnetic liquids with all sorts of materials to create these physical waves, and that was fascinating. But actually now we moved on, and what we're doing now is a bit more artistic, a bit more creative.
Yeah, but I was asking if you have already had the opportunity to try the experiment on, because I'm curious to know if these sounds somehow relate to music, if they can be experienced as musical. Is it a little bit like that or not?
So it's an interesting question. We're trying definitely to create escape. So a sound environment that feels almost like a composition of noises, if you so
Yeah,
want.
that could be very, yeah, for the audience, a very alive creative experience, the one you are taking part of it, and at the same time it can be very amazing. Like it really takes you to another world, because all these noises, you experiment them in real life if you are on the street in a way, but inside of that room is going to be experienced in a very different way. I'm wondering if that.
It is an art installation, so it is not a musical experience in itself, but it is a sound art experience, and as that, it really creates it creates a new connection between the noises around us and you as an audience, and that I think is almost, it really changes your connection with noise, and that's what I really like about the project. So yes, it's a beautiful sonic experience, because these noises, they change the characteristic from just a motorbike that drives past to something that you can operate with, that becomes almost a music instrument in its own right, that is happening, that you have a bit of control over, but then also not as much.
Not as much.
What we're also doing is we're visualizing different sound levels. What is with noise, what really starts to affect us are the decibel. So there's certain thresholds. As soon as noise becomes too noisy, too loud, it really starts to affect us more. And these are very simple thresholds, from 50 dB to 60 dB, from 60 dB to 70. And so we're visualizing some of these complexities and also some of the characteristics of noise. And that becomes quite a holistic experience, and I think quite, hopefully it changes really how our audiences think about noise and what they can do with it.
one of the things I found fascinating and very, very interesting is that even these kind of new experiences are creating new words, new ways to refer to things. For example, when you say sound landscapes or sculptural sounds, or this connection between the possibilities that exist between sounds that we assume as invisible and visible experience or visual experiences are not just creating the experience but also words and a whole new linguistic around it, isn't it?
It's so true.
Which is probably very poetic at the same time, and it allows us to give another dimension of understanding to all these things. One thing is experiencing it, and another is thinking about it, which I think is it's very valuable as the experience in itself. Are you aware of that?
Absolutely, and we've been doing a lot of writing over the years about the project, not just Kima Noise, but also the other iterations of the project. And it's interesting to see that we're not operating in a vacuum. We're not the only ones dealing with visual sound experiences, and increasingly there is, as you said, a whole language emerging, a new vocabulary emerging of people who are playing with visual sound in different ways, and talking about sound sculptures and these almost some sort of like as if there was a tactile, a physical, a tangible phenomenon to it. And but it's not just that we're talking about it, it is because these worlds, as you said, they're also emerging on a physical level. So part of what we're doing at the Tate is we want the audience to feel these noises also on the body, and very deep frequencies you can really feel. So one room will be dedicated just to that. The audience will be able to go in and physically feel these sound waves in real time and how it affects them. And these low frequencies, obviously not too much, so
not create anything that could be disruptive for people, right? Because that can happen also. It's a delicate and can be also a dangerous territory to dip into much without absolutely certainty of what are you going to find there. But I also was thinking about the we live in a society so visually oriented, and it's in a way being again the advocate of the devil. Do we need to really give shapes to our sounds? Is it that important, or is it a little bit playing too much with this need of making everything visual, everything striking to the eye, to the eye perception?
I have to say, I hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, I really feel it allows us to gain a deeper understanding. We're not trying to just create a new kind of artistic genre. What we're trying to do is to widen the scope of perception of how people think about sound. So I think that's the intention. And obviously it's not an educational project, it's an artistic project. But there is something that through the engagement with kind of a visual sound interface that happens, that allows people who might not have any access to this world of sounds, world of music and a musical vocabulary to gain a little bit of a deep understanding. So for instance, when we started the project, we did three installations with the deaf community, which allowed the deaf community to kind of see sounds and also feel sounds through these deep frequencies, for instance.
How was that?
Amazing, absolutely incredible, because it was just on a very, I hope so. For us it was amazing because we learned a lot, because obviously, as you said, it's sometimes you're almost preconditioned depending on which angle you're coming from, and so for me it really opened up a new spectrum. It allowed me to understand sound more deeper, I guess, But this was maybe an extreme example, but I think me, for instance, I'm not a musical person at all. I'm a very visual person, so I've studied the visual arts, and coming from Vienna, music was always everywhere, but I had a real difficulty understanding what harmony is, how frequencies work, what the differences between attacks and kind of energy envelopes and the different characteristics of sounds are. And I feel I learned a lot in the process, and the beauty is that through the engagement with these visual sound interfaces, and that sounds very technical, it's really not an interface, we're creating an artistic experience, but through engaging with it, you do, you're allowed to just see certain connections that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have been aware of.
Is it a free event? Anyone can
Anyone
join?
can come.
Okay. And the last day is more like a workshop.
That's right. Yeah, so the last day is we have a workshop for 2 hours with Professor Stephen Stansfield, and it is really about discussing with communities, but really with everybody who wants to attend, how noise affects them, and to get a bit of an understanding what each and every person can do to really engage with noise differently, I guess. Yeah, and not just as you said, not just to feel like it's something that is invasive and aggressive and daunted, but something that we can live with
explore
and
in a different way. Yeah, that's great. And how do you see this amazing project with Kima Noise as an evolution of what you were doing already on your own in a more visual, let's say, with a more visual interest? I saw on your webpage, for example, that beautiful photo series of photographies that you did with boys or men, exploring a little bit the new the new paradigm of male identity in our modern society. I would like to see how all those previous work and these are
connected,
naturally connected or organically connected for you as an evolution of your artwork.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm interested in is almost invisible phenomena, so things that are there, that are tangible, we know about it, but maybe we haven't found the right way of expressing it yet. And that's very much what we're doing with an Analema Group, is we're creating experiences that are ideally immersive, ideally participatory, but normally what we're trying to do, like with sound, it's there, we don't see it, but it's got a presence, and we're trying to work with this idea of presence. And that's one of the key factors in actually all of my artworks, is that I like this idea of presenting something, creating something, showing something that you can feel, but that you might not have words for just yet. And I guess that's what I'm interested in.
That's why it's called post-apocalyptic angels or something like that. Is that the title?
Yeah, so I mean, there's several series that I'm exploring. This is one of them. In this particular one, I'm really interested in this concept of feeding religious importance in our society. You know, that over the course of 3 generations, our society has kind of lost this very deep connection with religion. And I'm a very secular person, so I don't want to say this is right or wrong. I just wanted to comment on it, and that all of these symbols of a different time, they're still around us. You know, the churches, the sculptures of angels, and angels are hugely important, and also for very spiritual people. But they don't necessarily
even just as a mystical way of feel connected with something bigger than you, or more. So symbol and archetypes are also something that you are interested in.
Very interested on an abstract level and on a very very concrete level, like in this case. Yeah, and here I was interested in this idea of angels that are kind of bored and a bit without a sense of purpose, a bit without a sense of direction, because there is no clear kind of theological structure that is there for them anymore. So almost like they're unemployed angels.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that makes me think about coming back to Kima noise. Is it there any difference between the way male and female, or yes, in general, let's say conventional males and conventional females, in looking at genre in a very polarized way? Is a different way to perceive noise or to make being more or less noisy depending of genre aspects?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I actually don't really believe in binary gender types, and I don't even consider myself as belonging to one gender. So I guess the only reason why I'm interested in exploring this idea of male identity is because I think it is such a stale construct that is sometimes so hyped that I almost feel like I need to dismantle it a bit. And and because it's closer to my own history. But I actually really don't believe in gender stereotypes. And I do find this actually quite problematic, that in science we always try to distinguish between sexes, and there is just no need for it. So it's something that I always find a little bit difficult in society, but also in science and research.
Having this vision of sexuality or genre more holographic has something to do also with the development of your own work. For example, that one that are beautiful sculptures, very holographic kind of. I feel like the less polarized you see things, the more round you see them, the more whole you have a conception of. Maybe that's why your work tends to be going through an abstract direction, or that's why you feel so comfortable in this actual experiment with noise.
So the exploration of noise is really a shared exploration. I guess as that it probably has a different trajectory, because with Analema Group it's always the outcome of a discussion between all of us, and we're all bringing ourselves in a lot of different levels. And yes, we are very abstract, and I think we like this idea of also being interested in forms and shapes, and almost being minimalistic in the use of color. But we've just been appointed actually as the first artist in residence at the new National Gallery X, and this will be the first time that we're breaking this little dogma of ours. And it's not the first time, but we will be concentrating on color, specifically, also in an abstract way, but going a bit away from this purely minimalistic cradle and exploring color on a perceptual level in the context of the old masters, to create quite interesting holistic experiences.
That's amazing, because if noises affect our reaction and our way of feeling, or even our well-being in general, I think color have a great influence in how we feel, even the level of optimistic impulse or not, or the lack of it. It's very related. Seems to be a little bit stereotypical to talk like that, but I feel very connected with the power of color. Color helps me every day to perceive or show up in a way that for me could be more positive or more engaging or more active or more lively.
I agree with you. And I guess for me, it's not really a question of one or the other. I feel at home really in the two worlds, and they're almost like these two sides of a coin, where sometimes it's purely the exploration of form that is interesting, and symbols and very clear-cut shapes, and sometimes I'm just interested in exploring purely abstract, almost fragmented forms that have no clear outline. And then I'm really interested in the figurative and the human as a subject, and looking at not just the human as an embodied entity, but also as almost as a performer in a way. So I really like it when creativity takes you to places, and I guess ultimately what we're all interested in is exploring, using all of these different manifold possibilities that we have as artists and as creators to explore a lot of different ideas. Yeah, so there's a lot of different concurrent trajectories, I guess.
Do you think in that particular installation that Kima is gonna make now at the Tate, energy in itself plays an important part? It's going to change a lot depending of what people contribute or brings to the room or not?
Definitely. So the beauty is that with these sound sculptures, they measure also the pace. So if you draw something very fast, you will hear the sound traveling very fast around you. If you're very lyric and very slow, then you will create a different kind of experience. So yes, I do think that this will be very much up to the audience, to what they want to do with the space. And
which is incredible, because give to the audience a sort of power that audience, but by historically speaking, never have. It's more, the spectator always feels more like that, an spectator, more than a role, more than playing a very active role. And in this situation, it's going to be all the opposite. Is it? Are you inviting young people, kids? It's open for everyone any age. That's the idea.
That's the idea, and we, as a collective, we've loved family-based audiences from the outset. So very often kids are the ones who are never really afraid of sounds, of making sounds, and also exploring their voice. So Kima Noise is one of our largest projects. We have a second development that we're currently exploring, Kima Voice. And there it's all about the human voice and exploring.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Yeah, tell me, but I'm going to interrupt you briefly, because I have always thought that when you describe physically someone, you never include the voice, but the voice has an amazing repercussion in how you see someone or how you perceive someone.
Absolutely.
And it's almost a physical quality, the voice of someone. And voices can be, like you said before, it can have an effect very beautiful, very relaxing, or very emotionally good, or it can be something that annoys you a lot and makes you feel bad. So tell me please more about that, because I think it's fascinating.
So we've been exploring the phenomenon for quite some time. Initially at the Union Chapel, where we worked with performers, then at the Roundhouse. For the 50th anniversary, they invited us, they commissioned us to produce a piece, The Wheel. And in this case, the audience was invited to explore their voices and different characteristics, timbre, so different nuances in the human voice, in different visual forms. And this was the first time we worked with machine learning algorithms. So in this instance, the idea was to almost create a system that was intelligent or intelligible, and that would make sense of what kind of voice we were listening to. So a more fricative voice would have a different shape than a more tonal, more softer, more more flowing voice, if you so want. And we tried to translate these nuances into different visual forms, and it became quite a complex system with a lot of different possibilities. And so this was the first iteration of working with the human voice. And with Kima Voice, we went one step further, and we looked at the space in between voices, so how we resonate with one another. And
how the voices interconnect.
That's
beautiful.
So the harmonies between voices, because it's very easy to mathematically compute, actually, and it is a real relationship between sound as which has a lot of different components, but also this idea of a relationship between sounds is something that can be quite easily translated, and it's really interesting what happens when people who have never met each other are suddenly invited to harmonize, to create harmonies between their voices. And some people, it happens like that, and they just click, and suddenly different shapes.
So there's also chemistry between voices.
There is, definitely.
I love
called
that.
harmony.
It's called harmony. Yeah, it's called harmony in general when there's chemistry. Yeah, oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's going to happen again? Do you have any future plan for?
We definitely will. Right now, we're really
Kima
focusing.
voices, that's beautiful.
Yeah. We're focusing on the noise because it's a big development, and it's very soon now. Then obviously we have the National Gallery, but we just exhibited Kima voice, apologies, at the Barbican, a beautiful UCL sponsored symposium about AI and art.
And the response of the audience was great.
Was great, yeah, good. Absolutely wonderful, and it's really the more time people have to engage with it, the more they understand it.
Yeah, because also I guess for people it's really important not just have the experience of, but trying to understand how that works, the phenomenon you are creating there. And did you, in that particular case, also were working hand to hand with a scientist or someone from the science area?
In the case of Kima voice, we're always looking at a lot of different research, and it's actually normally our projects take quite some time to develop, so we're usually spending about almost 2 years on really developing a body of work.
I imagine.
Yeah, with this one it was quite a lot of research. It wasn't a specific person, it was a whole range of articles and also different schools of thought, because our Western conception of music is very classically trained and is almost a bit traditional, and not necessarily linking sounds to mathematics very straightforwardly.
But there are other cultures that don't.
And I think that's what we were interested in, almost finding a very what's the word? So a very deep connection between sound and mathematics, and I feel after.
Can you create some sort of mystical experience with something like that to go deep in, or instead of having an exterior experience, an experience that brings you in somehow, because.
But also
it's
together,
possible.
Not just in, but also together connects you with somebody that you've not really.
I'm thinking in a very individualistic way. And the idea is to create connection between people.
But what we have done, because you asked me about scientists, so we worked actually with a great institution, so they're called the Center for Performance Science, and they have a project that is called Hearts. It's a study about health and art and how the two can influence each other. They're between Imperial College and the Royal College of Music, and the Center for Performance Science basically enlisted us to work with them on the Great Exhibition Road Festival, and we had the installation of Kima Voice, and we tried to measure, so we developed together with the Center for Performance Science a questionnaire and measured how people felt before and after, and whether singing and creating sounds together would make them happier, if that would change their idea of social connectedness, or how connected they feel with one another.
And what did you find out?
That is the case. Yeah, people. If you are creating sounds with somebody you've not met, your voices connect. So, and we all have our very specific vocal signature. It's almost like a fingerprint. There's something very specific, very bespoke, very individual. And to be able to connect with somebody definitely shows that people feel less alone, less and
so we should talk louder on the tube.
Absolutely.
I always had the impression that in this particular country, noise is something that really perturb people. You can see how others react when there's like something that goes a little bit up the level of normal, and how when someone is speaking too loud, you can see the reaction of everyone else feeling, please, I don't need to listen to your conversation. but sometimes that also make us feel too isolated, everyone with headphones and their own little bubbles. So maybe it's an answer to start talking a little bit louder in public spaces,
Yeah, or
and
creating
somehow
spaces.
creating connections that way. If you have to describe London, the sound of London, with 2, 3 words, I don't know, choose as many as you want. Which ones would be those words?
For me, it is dynamic, exciting, exhilarating. It's some of the words we used: vibrant, alive. Very. It's part of why I love the city so much is that it feels like there's such a diversity, such a cacophony of different sounds from everywhere, and
So it's definitely a positive impression.
definitely.
So let's invite everyone to the event of Kima Noise that is going to happen at Tate Exchange. That's the 5th floor of the building. And I don't know, I think everyone should go. We definitely...
Yes, it's from the 20th to the 24th of November at the Tate Exchange at Tate Modern. You're all very much invited. It's free and open for everybody.
So see you there. And thank you so much. Thank you for this
Thank you so much.
amazing conversation. It really, really, really made my perception of everything wider and better.
Thank you,
Thank
Carla.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Thanks.
See you there.